Welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of Glamour Woman. In today's episode, we'll be knowing more about a remarkable woman that had a great achievement, especially when it comes into the pandemic that happened recently. With us, dear viewers, we're going to know more about our guest, but we're going to head to an introduction and then we'll be back.
Dr. Sara Al-Gabandi, Head of Public Health Laboratories and Management of the Virology Program, clinically graduated from Kuwait University College of Medicine, work in public health laboratories, which are reference laboratories with WHO and CDC for tests. Dr. Sara teach board and medical assistant students, attended several medical conferences and workshops abroad to represent the state of Kuwait. During the pandemic, the virus laboratory of the public health was the only laboratory that carried out the examination and was the reference in Kuwait and examined more than 500,000 samples.
And we're back, dear viewers, to welcome our special guest in today's episode. With us, we'd like to welcome Dr. Sara Al-Gabandi. We're really happy to have you here today.
Hi everyone, I'm really happy to be in KTV2 and a Glamorous Woman. I hope it will be useful and nice episode about us. Thank you.
So, of course, when it comes into knowing more about you and about the career that you've been working on so far, it is more of a challenging, let's say, career, especially being a female and working in the medical field is something itself challenging because it's more of a consuming for time, for even when it comes into us here in Kuwait being a lot of, let's say, social events, family gathering and so on. Tell us more about why did you pick this career and proceeding in it itself?
The beginning, I chose my career since I was in middle schools. My mother is a doctor. I'm really proud of her. She was my role model actually to be a doctor. I saw her how she worked very hard to be a doctor. She has a lot of duties and she tried to compensate the working hours at home with us. Then I decided to be a doctor where I studied very hard since middle school till high schools. In the high school I bring a very good high grades that allows me to go on Faculty of Medicine of Kuwait. Although my mother was like a bit worried, she doesn't want me to go in that field, despite she's a doctor, because she was worried about, as you mentioned, the social life and everything. But I decided, I insisted to be a doctor. Then I went to Faculty of Medicine in Kuwait University. It was a really best 7 years in my life. It was full of joy, full of hard work, full of friendships and full of many situations. And alhamdulillah, I managed to be a doctor after that hard work.
Yes, alhamdulillah. And of course, mentioning the topic where mothers are always afraid after, let's say, looking for their kids, and even when it comes into choosing their career, we've seen so many mothers, let's say, they do want their best for their children, but they would always prefer something easy to go on to, or let's say to have. And to have that even in your mother is something, let's say, to prove to everyone that even though mothers have a career and you would like to take them as a role model, never feel sad when you see that your mother don't want you to reach that. It's not because it's like, let's say, making you less, but it is for your comfort and so on. Telling us about the best 7 years, that shows that it is a really hectic life when it comes into the field itself. So tell us more about your, let's say, adventure when it comes into remembering such great memories in college during the 7 years that you, let's say, spent.
Well, in these 7 years, it was full of studying and hard working.
Yes.
The best thing that I can remember that was in the anatomy, where we went down to see for the cadavers, for the anatomy lessons and the anatomy course. the first thing what happens to me is I fainted at that time. Yeah, and then when I went out, it took me like 1 year. I don't eat even meat because of this anatomy. Then it was like a part of my life enjoyment to do a cadaver
Yes.
and testing in anatomy.
Yes.
Other things that we have clinical years where we have training in the hospitals. We had very really nice groups like brothers and sisters there. We saw a lot of patients. We tried to solve many problems because sometimes the seniors at that times, the doctors were so busy, and we were students that we look for every tiny problem that we can deliver to the seniors, and we were really a messengers from a patient to a doctors.
Yes.
And we have really nice teaching, and really we learned a lot from our professors. There are professors and doctors, they were really very hard on us. But when we grow up and we graduate, we know how kind they are and how really they taught us lessons by only doing and by keeping our role models for that.
Yes, and as you just mentioned, working at that time, and of course being and associated with all of your colleagues when it comes into all of these memories and all of these achievements and the ups and downs that happens during the tough years itself, is something very important to cherish and keep in mind, of course, when it comes into having such memories. But also, aside to that field itself, we've always seen that studying medicine field is not only depending on the 7 years, but you actually continue on studying after these years and choosing your specialization and so on. Tell us more about that. Like, what made you choose your specialization and working within it so far?
Actually, I loved microbiology, including virology, when I was a medical student. Then I decided after graduation to go to pediatric field. Then I saw a lot of challenges there, and a lot of people or a lot of students or doctors going to that field. So I tried to find something that is rare and can have an impact into the countries. And Dr. Widad al-Naqib, he was our mentor. He is the one who taught us. I met him suddenly in the corridors of Faculty of Medicine, and he told us that, what about clinical virology, Sarah? Why don't you go there? So I thought about it, I read about it, then I really loved it, and then I joined the program Clinical Virology Fellowship.
Yes, and of course it is, when it comes into medicine, it is all of the specialties are actually challenging, and it has its positive and side effect. When you said pediatrics, I think the most challenging thing is dealing with children themselves crying and so on. So yeah, I understand when it comes into that field itself. Yes.
With clinical virology, actually, they called us as a consultations for all the fields. So we go and we just have a consultation for pediatrics, for adults. So we saw all the kind of patients at the same time. So this is what I love in that specialty.
Yes, it is more of a specialty that actually involves in every kind of medicine itself and even field itself.
Exactly.
So it makes it also more challenging in that particular matter. Tell us more about your job, working with laboratories and everything in that, especially dealing with the new viruses or with even old viruses that are actually coming up into the field itself, on the plat itself. Everyone is scared from a certain virus, a certain disease, and so on. How do you, let's say, work and operate in such matter?
Yeah. So when I was assigned as head of public health laboratories, it was really a challenge because it's a big field. These laboratories include virology, food lab, TB lab, and malaria lab, and really a huge amount of testing and protocols to be done. So at the beginning, I was having a team in every field or in every lab. We sat with each other and we check what are the deficiencies and what are the area of improvements that's needed. So this is the first thing, that it's a teamwork. This is what I learned in my medical student or medical studies, that teamwork is the key things to have a great work or a great achievement. So I had a team in every lab where we worked very hard to improve our deficiencies, and protocols were done. We had a good collaboration with the WHO and the CDC. We were updated to every new protocols that is needed for every test or every challenge in the lab. And we made a lot of achievement in our public health laboratories.
So when it comes into dealing with your specialty and even dealing with the family member and friends, since you're working, let's say, in a critical place that actually needs you to go to laboratories and let's say consider some kind of viruses and checkups and so on and updates in that field.
Yeah.
How do they feel about it? Like, because it is more of a challenging, risky job.
Yeah.
Like, how do they let's say work on that
Well,
matter?
they used to call me a moving virus. So my mom always, when we have a gathering, usually in Kuwait we have what's called Zwara. Usually we have it every Friday. Like mom, she always call me and Sarah, please make sure that you are really you change your clothes, because I used to work even in the weekend. Please come out with the sterilization, and she used to put alcohol near the door. So I told her, Mom, it's just a virus that can be transmitted even by the air or by droplets. I'm fine, I don't have anything. My mom also, she forced me to test myself sometimes to make sure that I'm viruses free from influenza or from COVID.
Yes.
So I take that in a fun way, and I deal with it easily because I understand the fear that the families go through. Me as a mother, I was worried about my kids, if I can transfer any virus to them by mistakes, because I usually work in the lab with the samples. I try to take all the extra precautions, even over that is needed, because I was worried as a mother to transfer anything. We changed our clothes in the lab with the special rooms. We wear extra gowns, double gowns, and masks, and with the gloves. So I always take precautions even before the COVID era.
Yes.
But these things, they wouldn't ever imagine it. The family or the friends, they don't imagine what's happening exactly in the lab. They thought that you are staying with the virus, talking to the virus at the same time. That
Yes.
was a problem.
Yes, and I think also we're also affected through movies and
Exactly.
series that actually highlighted if something happened, let's say inside the laboratory, let's say a mask is removed from one of the persons who are working, everything should be shut down and they lock it inside. So I think that's
Yes.
why they start to get
We
really
have
scared. Yes.
like if you have any outbreak or any technicians who have positive COVID or any test, we make sure who are the contacts, and we have to do a traceability with the preventive medicine. There was a home quarantine for everything. There's protocol for safety in every virus or any aspect test that is done in the lab.
Yes, and of course, when it comes into your time and your work, when it comes into working in such place, people tend to, even when it comes into family and gatherings, if we have a doctor at home, then we have to make sure about and test that doctor with all of the questions and
Yes.
all of the details when it comes into a specific, let's say, general virus, and then they would check after your answer, is it true, through using, let's say, one of the search bar, Google, and so on. Tell us about that experience.
Well, I deal with that also in a fun way. In the beginning, I was taking it seriously, but then I know that the society, they would take over everything, and we saw that in the COVID pandemics. So sometimes if I sit in any family or friends gathering, you will hear people talking about medicine and giving a medical advice, despite they are not a doctors. Sometimes I just laugh, and sometimes I deliver the information in an easy way instead of being angry and argument. Just I deliver it in an easy, understandable way, so they will accept the information from me, especially with the vaccines and the drugs that is needed for treatment. I take it easily with fun.
Yes.
I thought this is the best way in this society.
Yes, and as you just mentioned and highlighted that not to take it as serious as it is, like it is something really a serious matter dealing with any kind of disease and virus, because it is kind of risky. You could actually prescribe a medicine to a person who actually doesn't need it, and you could, let's say, increase that kind of virus, especially if we're talking about the flu. Instead of, let's say, having antibiotics or something that could actually maintain it, you would actually take a medicine that increase and make you even more, let's say, having let's say more of a bad symptoms than the regular ones. So how do you actually let's say advise people when it comes into that important matter and dealing with these kind of, let's say, simple and normal diseases that we actually normally have?
People these days are very aware, and they are following the social medias. It's all over. All the panels of social medias are there, but unfortunately, not all the social media are reals. Most of them are rumors, and most of them are really accusations of many things that may harm the patient. I believe in the COVID era, there are a lot of rumors coming into ICU patients where they refuse to take treatment because of that rumors, and we have a death rate because of the rumors. So it's really a serious matter, but we have to deal with it carefully. Where I always in my interviews, I try to also advise all the audience just to go to the real source of information. Ministry of Health, they cope this. We have a social media, we have an Instagram and Twitter where they post everything which is from its source
Yes.
in scientific way and an easy way that can reach everyone from the youngest to the eldest generations. So I always advise to go into the official source. I try to give some links that, or like say YouTube links that may explain the hazard or the risk of the of any behavior that is done not upon a doctor request or a doctor advice. I try to advise in a really heavy and light in a light way that may not harm the audience that's in front of me, because they always come in an aggressive way and they
Yes.
want to fight with that as if they have and they know
The
everything.
knowledge itself.
Yes, the
Yes,
knowledge.
yes, indeed.
So I try to deliver it in like easy way with some humor and some convincing in a different way, depend on the audience personality.
Yes.
So I think this is the best practice instead of having an argument and war with
Indeed.
people, because sometimes they do this aggressive behavior because of their panic.
Yes.
So you have to understand the panic behind this and explain it in a very easy way.
Indeed, I totally agree with you on that point. But of course, we're going to continue more in this interview. But dear viewers, we're going to head to a break, and then we'll be back.
Hi, welcome to our segment. Today we will talk about a fashion designer. A fashion designer outlines design and creates clothing garments. Fashion designers, however, don't just make clothes. They often apply cultural attitudes, aesthetics, and inspiration to their design. Designers also worked in tandem with other individuals in the fashion business, like stylists, pattern makers, seamsters, costume designers, modeling agencies, design firms, magazine editors, and more. The fashion industry is an international multi-billion-dollar business with many sectors and career paths beyond traditional, including fashion, merchandising, eyewear, outwear, sportswear, accessory design, footwear, outwear handbags, and more. 6 things to become a fashion designer. The first one, get inspired. Pull inspiration from things you are genuinely interested in: music, art history, architecture, and especially people. With inspiration following, use mood boards to organize and edit your thoughts. Your boards can consist of a wide range of visual references, including editorial sources, street style, and photographs. Even if they aren't related to fashion, you can also compile fabrics, textures, colors, style references, and accessories. 2. Study fashion trends. While you don't need a fashion degree to design clothes, it helps have fundamental knowledge of art, creating, and the fashion business to get you started as a clothing designer. Take sewing or pattern makes classes if you don't know how to physically create garments, or take a drawing class if you are unfamiliar with the sketching or computer-aided design. Even classes in fashion history can contribute to your design inspiration. Familiarize yourself with the latest fashion trends by studying current fashion shows. 3. Start smart, not small. Your goal at the beginning of your career is to gain as much experience as you can. Ask questions. Reach out to collaborate and seek out mentors. Look for internships or entry-level positions to get closer to the products you want to create and the customers you hope to serve. If you surround yourself with people who share your excitement and drive, you will push each to create better products. And most people won't be around others to be excited about what they are doing. 4. Sketch your ideas. The first goal of a sketch is not begin visualizing the design in your head. The second goal of a sketch is to create a blueprint for the pattern maker to create your first outline or prototype. These minimalistic, flat drawings will communicate the technical elements of your idea, including darts and seams, sleeve length, overall length, fit shape, and more. You can indicate what fabrics might be used for each garment by attaching a swatch to the page. This gives the pattern maker an idea of the weight of stiffness the garment should have and whether they are printed, patterned, or solid. 5. Hone your voice and signature style. You don't have to stay within a particular style as long as you make thoughtful, creative decisions that aid your brand as a designer. All of your creative decisions in the design process, even the details, tell a story. 6. Build your collection. Creating a collection is not a linear journey. You can build a unified collection that represents a singular idea, or your collection can be composed of a variety of looks representing different ideas, all connected by your design choices. These might be consistent proportions, colors, or even the lack of color. Focus your collection to display your point of view. If you choose to limit the colors in your collection, you ought to vary your and vice versa. You can ask your partners, peers, or friends to give their feedback on your design and how the pieces all fit together.
And we're back, dear viewers, to continue our interview with Dr. Sara Al-Gabandi. Of course, when it comes into your career, the labs are one of the most important places to be, let's say, cited in the scene itself. Tell us more about the kind of labs that you have here.
We have here different sections actually of the lab. We are here in the virology lab, one branch of the public health laboratories. We are in the PCR sections. This is what we call the free area, where we are comfortably standing and talking.
Yes.
There are extractions area and clean area where certain gowns and gloves have to be worn.
So just to tell the audience, we are in the clear area.
Yeah.
That's why we don't need to wear lab
No.
coats and such things. So when it comes into this section, reaching to the labs, how do you actually operate? Is there a system that you actually go through, whether, let's say, from wearing, from having all of the essentials? Like, how do you actually operate here?
Well, actually, we have a reception area to start with. This is where we have to receive the sample in specific conditions, wearing the gowns and the gloves with a mask. We have also what we call biosafety cabinets, where we number the sample and we transfer them into specific tubes to prepare them for the testing.
Yes.
Then the sample will be transferred to the clean area where they prepare the kits or the reagent to test for the viruses in the sample. Then it will go through the extraction area, then to the amplification area where the machine is there, and the sample will be amplified and detection of the virus will be in the machine.
Yeah, so highlighting and talking about, of course, our time, our era, when it comes into having COVID and all of the pandemic that been through within the years that passed. I'm very sure that these places are, let's say, more of the most important places that were operating during that pandemic. Tell us about the things that actually happened during that time.
So Public Health Lab was the first lab who's responsible to test COVID all over Kuwait. So let's say that the pandemic has advantages and disadvantages too. One of the advantages, the Public Health Lab were operated fully. It covers all Kuwait, all the hospitals, all the centers that was there for the COVID. So we cover all Kuwait. It was really overloaded. We done till now over 500,000 samples, which was done. The good thing, we have very intense, good training, because we've been training for pandemics for years, but when it comes to COVID, we apply the training and the team were really great, and the COVID team were really responsible, working 24/7. We had a lot of blood samples, many rooms here, we cried in that room, many rooms there, we laughed at that rooms. We operate really very well, and I would really thank my team for operating, and they are still working for other viruses, and the work is continuous.
Yes, and of course, to highlight about the, let's say, the honorable work that everyone did during the pandemic, especially in the medical field, where, as you just said and highlighted, working for 27 hours, 24/7, and not even having, let's say, a time to spend with the family. I think even everyone here was isolated when it comes into that matter. It was very difficult to even have that communication that we usually used to have. So moving on to this important, let's say, question, how did you actually deal, all of you, let's say, especially the ones that are working with you here as a team, dealing with the family members, dealing with the distance that you actually have to keep in order to keep everyone safe?
Actually, we didn't deal. We are forced to be isolated from our family members. Before COVID era, we tried to balance the work and the family, but unfortunately in COVID pandemics, we didn't even balance. The COVID was taking over our family and friends. So at that time, I remember I don't see my family, I didn't see my kids like for weeks. I used to live here in the lab to finish all the samples, to make sure the statistics were right and the sample were really a real positive to announce. The most hard moment where we announced the first positive sample when it comes to Kuwait, it appeared from this lab. So it's really a big responsibilities. A lot of our families suffered because they didn't see us, especially also when the curfew come after. This was really a very hard time for us, because even the family was locked at home. They want, as a mother, they want me, and we have also a male technicians and doctors as a father were needed at home, but they were always sitting at the labs to finish all the samples. Alhamdulillah, we overcome all these things, and becomes let's say a memory that is past, where we prove that we can manage any pandemics and to help our Kuwait in many ways.
Yes, indeed. And of course, as we just said and mentioned, that it was something really amazing to see such great effort actually showed at the end when it comes into the result, and especially for today when it comes into the result that we reached, that we're actually finally getting back to our, let's say, live, everyone is gathering and so on. But of course, keeping in mind that this is something ongoing, we have to stay safe, of course, in that matter, and not forget what we learned from the previous, let's say, lesson that we had during the pandemic. Now, this could even highlight, maybe you'd like to agree on that point, Dr. Sarah, that it highlighted this kind of field for students who wants to have their own future career, that working in the medicine field, especially in the labs, is something, let's say, to keep in mind, because we've seen so many educators thinking of having a career, being a doctor, being an engineer, and so on, and forgetting that these actually, let's say, fields are also important, even when it comes into the specialties. Do you see that people started to aware and know and see the importance of, let's say, such kind of career, especially the microbiology field?
Actually, we spend years to announce or to promote for our specialty, but sometimes things happen for a reason, and one of it is COVID pandemics. When it happened, it was a reason that we are really were none in Kuwait, especially we are few doctors all in this specialty, and our opinion was needed all over Kuwait. So I think this part taught everyone that this specialty is needed. I'm actually the acting program director for Clinical Virology Board, where we teach doctors to specialize in this field. So this door will be open again for new residents, inshallah, by next year. And people now, a lot of doctors want to go into that field and know the importance of this.
Yes, it is, as you just said, something really positive, because it really educated us and even helped to ease so many things that in the past was really difficult. You have to travel and so on, and you have your work to do and achieve. But at the end, everything, let's say, happens for a reason, and this is one of the reasons that actually we had when it comes into this, let's say, pandemic itself. Also reaching to the point working with the WHO. Tell us more about it.
So Public Health Lab is one of the national influenza centers recognized by the CDC and the WHO. Also, we are a polio certified lab with the WHO, where only the polio virus testing is done in our laboratory. So we have this collaboration even before the COVID era. But before the beginning of the pandemics, we have really good connections with the WHO to update our protocols regarding COVID testing, and also regarding any reagent that we can order to cover Kuwait. And we did prepare that even before the pandemics, and the lab was ready for preparing any protocols. So this is one of the good side of having a good relationships with the WHO and the CDC. community.
Yes. Now, Dr. Sarah, moving on when it comes into your own, let's say, self, we've seen so many people dealing with technology or dealing even with the lab and everything could actually make you reach to a point that you cannot see any laptop anymore or any PC, let's say, devices.
Yeah.
Does that actually happen to you, especially in that
Exactly.
time? Yeah.
It happens to us after when the corona and the vaccine, when vaccine appears, which was really a miracle to us that will save us from the pandemics. We had our body was exhausted and psychologically and physically. So we have this phase of being tired, but we still have to continue working and to cover all the things. Yes, I hate looking at the iPad and the laptops now, but I'm forced to look at it to have Zoom meetings and online meetings done by the either all the WHO on this or CDC or any scientific conference is done now by the Zoom links.
Yes, I totally, let's say, relate to you when it comes into that matter. But in the end, it is something that we actually have to achieve and reach and use indeed, because it actually helps us to ease in when it comes into the work itself.
Exactly.
Now, dealing with the at the time where the vaccine appeared, I was one of the ones that urged for them to provide for pregnant women, because I was pregnant at that time and it was really stressful for me. But once I delivered, they said you can take it when you're pregnant, and I was really angry and upset at that time and point. So when it comes into that, were you the first, let's say, one of the persons, let's say, that actually weren't scared when it comes into that matter? Because dealing with that makes you really want to have a cure, but at the same time sometimes you could hesitate and somehow, like, how did you actually feel, especially you're working in the field itself?
So when the vaccine appears, we know it is effective and we know it is done in a way that is safe. So I am with my team was the first one who took the vaccine when it was introduced on December. So we are the first one with the ministers. We took the vaccine at that time. So I'm really with the vaccine because I know it is the only way to get out from the pandemics. Many people were sitting at home and they don't know what is the effect of the vaccine. A lot of anti-vax at that time, which they convert to vaccine friendly after. But because we are the one who in the field and we worked with the patient and we know what is the effect of having the COVID disease, especially in immunocompromised patients. So yes, I agreed on the vaccine. The thing with the pregnancy, in the beginning they were worried because there is no enough study for the pregnant. But we knew that at that time that it will be given to pregnant lady, and really after it was approved by the company to be given to this category. But really the vaccine was the saver, and we know from the beginning. And we thank God it appears like a bit earlier than expected. It saves us by now.
Yes, and alhamdulillah, everything is back to normal because of that solution and that vaccine. So thank you very much for your effort, for your work, and for your time being here separated from the family with the team, trying to maintain what's happening, and also giving, when it comes into all of the audience, that any detail is actually provided. You should, let's say, look for it and find the correct source for it. So thank you very much for your time and your effort. It was really a pleasure having you.
Me too. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you. And with that, viewers, that was our interview with Dr. Sarah Gabandi.